Hey there, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So we're doing a one-off show here. This is a show, I've had a couple people ask me about my playlist and stuff, so I thought I would go through the reasons for my playlist and give you what's on my playlist so that you can see how it moves and how it works for me and how that helps me, so that people can follow how this helps me decide on what shows I'm going to do, what albums I'm interested in, and how that works, all that works. So I'll start out by, I'll give you a bit of an explanation. So I have a playlist. It's an AOR playlist, album dominated. So basically what it is I pick an album and I put it in my playlist. So my playlist has changed over the years, but the current status of it is what's important. So basically I have 20 albums in my playlist, and they go on this particular shelf right back here. You'll see it's empty right now because they're all sitting here in front of me, and I usually rotate them. It actually holds 20 exactly. So the one at the top has been on the longest, the one at the bottom has been on the least longest, and generally speaking they move up. They don't necessarily get to the top and come off and then somebody goes at the bottom and you have to move the whole thing up. It doesn't work that way. So generally what happens is I may pull an album midway through, something that's maybe only been on there maybe 6 to 8 weeks or maybe 3-4 months or whatever. I pull it out. And usually when I decide to pull an album, it's for one of a few reasons. Either I've got to the point where it's starting to get burned out. I try to pull them before they get burned out, because I don't want them being burned out and I never listen to them again. So I try to pull them. I find by doing this and putting them back on the shelf is that in 2 or 3 months' time they tend to get some juice back, and then they're not burned out, and I can listen to them periodically, which is much better for me than burning an album out so completely that I can't even stand the sight of it. I try not to let anything get to that stage. So how do I know when to pull them? Well, when it gets to a point where I've listened to it enough and I'm very familiar with it, and I've probably done a look back at a classic rock album on it or something like that, and I just feel like it's starting to slide, then I just generally make the decision to pull it. Other reasons for pulling it off of the playlist include it wasn't what I thought it was. I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought, and I don't foresee myself enjoying it. Then I might pull it out of the list. Other thing is that maybe an album that I owned a long time ago, I got it recently and I like it a lot. I put it in my playlist, and then after a short period of time, it doesn't have the kind of stay to it that a new album would have because I've listened to it before a lot. So it starts to get burnt out fairly early, so I pull it. Another reason for pulling it is in the past I used to pull them if I didn't like them. But I've discovered from listening to albums that some of the stuff I don't like initially ends up being amongst my favorites. And then I have other shows that I watch, and one of those is The Sea of Tranquility, and in that case he may say, you should give this album a little bit longer. I keep trying to listen to it and it'll come around, and I've taken that advice to heart and tried that on several albums, and it's worked out really well. So that's another reason why I don't pull them as quickly as I would. As for pulling them any other time, it simply may be that the album wasn't quite as good as I thought, and there's other albums that are waiting in this list here. This is my, I'm banging against my thing, I don't want to knock it over. This is my list of albums that are waiting their turn in the playlist. Usually there's about anywhere from 5 to 8 albums in that. It's been as many as 10, but generally I go 5 to 8. I don't want to get too far ahead because something new may come in that I want to put on the list, and I don't like, once they're in the waiting list, they're waiting their turn to go on there. I don't like to bang them down and put something in there. That to me is not fair, and so I don't do it. So you see that there's a couple here that are on angles. They don't quite fit into my rack thing, so I've got them there waiting their turn, but not really quite there. These are my new ones, by the way, the ones I just purchased. I purchased a whole bunch of stuff, which I will get into when I do my haul at the end of the month. Had a big day on the weekend. Last month, I think I only had the 2 albums. I just didn't get out there, and I just didn't see anything. So anyways, so that's the reason for pulling them. The reason I have the playlist is for several reasons. The 2 most obvious being that the one, I like all the stuff in the playlist, and so I want to play it as much as possible. So, and I tend to rotate them. So who's ever at the top goes first, and then second and third, and so on down the line. So that if I get to a day where I haven't listened for a few days, I go back, I start at the next one down, and I keep going, and then I rotate and then go back to the top again. This gives them all a fair shake. There's 20 in that, generally 20, so I would say it's a pretty decent week if I do 10 to 12 albums off the playlist, listening to them. So on average, most of the albums will get listened to at least once every 2 weeks. I've had some slow weeks where they've had to wait an extra week, but generally speaking, it's about that. The other reason for doing it, of course, is because sometimes I get in these cleaning modes or stuff that has to be done around the house, and so I like to put my play albums in on and then I'll listen to that and then go to the next one, and this gives me a chance to listen to them while still doing activities that need to be done. The other reasons, there's a couple of other reasons, and they've come up more because of this show, because of this channel. I've discovered with myself that tends to be a few different types of albums for me. There's the type that I like right off the bat and I just want to kill them. Then there's the type that I kind of like some of the songs but not all of them, so I want to play them for that reason. And then there's the type that I don't really like initially when I hear them, but I know from experience with this particular group that they're going to take off at some point. And then there's some that I'm going on based on other people's experience. They've told me this is a good album, that I should like it, and I don't. But I play it in the playlist, knowing full well that some of them, not all of them, but some of them will come around. So I'm trusting other people's, I'm having faith in other people's, because those people that I put there tend to like the same things as me, and if they like this album, then there's a chance I will, so I tend to give it longer on the playlist because of that. So those are your reasons why I have the playlist. So then also it's also a good source for look back material. If I want to do a look back at a classic rock album, sometimes I'll go to my list, pull one out, and I'll do one on this one this week. Or I look at my playlist and say, well, this album's been up here for 3, 4, 5 months now. I've been listening to it. It's starting to get a little bit long in the tooth. Maybe now's a good time to do a look back on it. That's another thing that I do. So those are all my kind of reasons for having a playlist. And then, of course, I have the off playlist too. I have stuff that's new that I want to listen to a first time, so I will play that. Maybe I'll fit that in somewhere. Or I might have albums in this, you can't see it, there's a rack down below here of albums I bought but I haven't had a time to listen to, and they go in there. Usually they're albums that I know I'm going to listen to, but they may not be as exciting for me to listen to as some of the ones that are new, right? So, and the ones that are from new, once they go through the hull, they get thrown in that list down there. If they haven't been listened to yet, they get thrown down there and they wait their turn to be played as well. And then the rest go on the rack in alphabetical order, which is how I do things. So as you can see, I'm a very meticulously an orderly type of person. And I think this comes from my my desire for baseball and numbers. So anyways, I don't want to digress too much on it. I've explained why I have it, and and the purpose of it and how it helps me with this show. And it has helped me because I pulled albums that are on there to do look backs on. Some of them I pull when I'm pulling them off to put some new album on. I will do the look back. Sometimes I pull them because I want to do that particular album now, right? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the ones on there, and this will probably show you how varied it is. Sorry, I have a little bit of a list here of things that I need to put up. So we'll start, and I'll just do them from who's in the number one slot all the way down. That's how I'm going to do it. Because it's not really, just because an album's at the top of the list doesn't necessarily mean it's my favorite either. Sorry, they're sliding around here. I don't really like that because that's when they get broke. Yeah, so just because an album's at the top of this list doesn't mean it's my favorite. It's just been on the, it's a seniority system if you want. It's been on the rack the longest. That's why it's at the top. It's for no other reason. It's not up there for any other reason other than it's just been around the longest. And I'll tell you what's, like usually I have like a top 5. There's 5 of them that are my favorite. I got them kind of in my mind how that is. And then the rest are varying degrees of how I like them. So we're going to start with this one because many of you, I've done a video on this already. Great album. There we are. That's better. Gentle Giants, Acquiring the Taste. It's been on my playlist now for over 9 months. That's long. I cannot think of in recent history of any album that's come over 9 months. There's a couple have gotten close. The one that I took off last week, the Adam Hart Mother, was up there pretty close to that time slot too. But this album, just a little bit about it. And I've done a look back, so if you want to look about the album, that's fine. But just about it, the reasons for it. So I wasn't a huge Gentle Giant fan. I tried them with 3 friends. I bought the album in the 80s and I listened to it periodically and just never really caught on for me. And then when I started watching Sea of Tranquility, I noticed this guy was a huge fan of Gentle Giant. So I thought I'd give him another chance, so I bought this album. And I listened to it once and same thing. I felt the same thing that I felt from the other one, so I put it away. And then he kept doing these shows, and then he started talking about how they're so good instrumentally and how their music is so well put together. And I just never felt that with them. So I thought, he's got a better idea of these things than I do. So I gave it another shot. Listened to it again. It's still nothing. So then I heard him say on an episode how some albums are very impenetrable, and this was one of the ones he talked about, and he said you really got to give this a lot of time. So I put it in my playlist, and for the first couple of months it wasn't really that noticeable. I played it when its turn came, and that was it, right? Then I started liking one particular track, and I think it was Wreck. I think it was Wreck. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Wreck. And I started liking that. And then from there, the album just started to mushroom. And it went through 2 phases. So it went up, and then it kind of started to slide again. And then, bang, all of a sudden exploded back up there and became my favorite album. Somewhere around the 6 months range. And it stayed up there for a while. And then it just started fading over the last little bit. And now it's starting to come back on again. So it's not even close to being pulled off yet, and it's already been on there 9 months. No album's ever going to top this. I can't see that happen. This is an album that my prediction is it's destined to be a masterpiece for me, and it could and probably will break my top 10 albums. And I haven't had one break my top 10 albums since Songs from the Wood back in 2009. So it's been 13 years since somebody's cracked that elusive top 10 albums, and this one's going to do it. It may take a few years. It's getting close to the time where it'll be a number 1, which means after a year, albums that I've been listening to for a year, they got eligibility to be a number 1 album. And the Masterpiece albums are a lot longer. It usually takes about 5 years, but sometimes I will make the exception on an album that's 3 or 4 years, and this one may be one of those. So, anyways, there you have it. That's my that's the album that's been on the playlist the longest. The second one, another album. I liked it more initially, and it was recommended from the same site, and I liked it a lot almost initially, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow. It's like a fantastic album. Every track on it I love. Destined for greatness with me. I think this will be definitely a number one when its year comes up, and will make a masterpiece at some point. May crack the top 10 as well. So there's 2 albums currently on my playlist that have a chance to break my top 10, and that hasn't happened in a decade. And you know this album, of course. I did a look back on it. Blue Oyster Cult's Secret Treaties. Fantastic album. So it's been on my charts not quite as long. I think it's pushing, I think it's over 6 months now. I think it's about 6 months. 6 or 6 months. The next album up is this one, who I took from one of the guys off of the Prog Seat, who suggested this was a good album, talking to people, and I thought, I'm going to buy it based on his thing. And then when I got it, I paid a lot for it, and I was disappointed. And I thought, I'll never trust them again, all this normal stuff that goes through. And then I did a recent album look on it, because it was a fairly new album, a couple years old, and it's very different. The cover is really great, and then I decided I would put it in my playlist, and it's been up there now. What do I got? Probably around the same. I think it's about the same as the Blue Oyster Cult. I think they're about 6 months each. It's been on there, and it's continuously getting better and better, and I've come to really like this album a lot. So now I'm listening to that guy again for something else, right? That's just how it is, right? You have to get some success from recommendations, and then you want to go back to the person, right? So another great, fantastic album. Is it worth the $28 I spent on it? I'm not sure yet, but it's 2-3 months ago I would have said definitely not, but now I'm not so sure. So it may end up being worth that. So that's the third album on the playlist. The next album is an album I never I've known about this album for decades. I've seen it, and I just never went there because I just didn't like one particular track by this guy, and I just thought I won't like it, so there's no point in getting it. This album, can you see it? Yeah, Welcome to My Nightmare. This album, I started playing on a list and I liked it, and it surprised me that I liked it, and then I started liking it a lot. But it's one of those albums that it initially caught me right away. I liked it, and it's faded a bit since then. So now I think I got it. I think it's in there now, like about, and I think it's around 5 months. I've had it about 5 months, and it's starting to fade a bit. I don't think it'll get pulled in the next month or so, but it could. But it's a really good album. Right? Next up, this one. Now this one gets a lot of latitude because the first one was so good, and this is one of the bands who I decided to listening to them in the order they came out, because I had no prior experience to the group. So I thought, you know what, part of the journey with a group is going through them as they develop, and so I figured if you go album chronologically as they develop, you will maybe get some of that. You won't get it all because it's now 50 years since they did that album, or this one anyways. And but I like it, and it's grown on me. The first album I liked, but it was difficult to get into. This one I liked less and more difficult to get into. And now I'm into the third one. It's really hard to get into, but yeah, I've started to grow on this album's grown on me quite a bit. It's also been out on the charts for about 5 months on the playlist. Sorry. I like the artwork. It's kind of like almost like school age kind of art, but pretty good. And the music is fantastic on it. Some different sounds to it as well. Next one up, an album I thought would come off. I did a live album video on this one, and I liked it, and I thought, it'll last 5-6 months. It'll last maybe 3 months, and it'll be gone. but it's now being on there. Let me see. Yeah, it's been on there, 4 months, about 4 months, and I'm still liking it quite a bit. And I've listened to it maybe a dozen times now, or half a dozen, anyways. It's got a really crisp, good sound to it, and I did a video on it, so if you want to see more on it, you can. A really solid album. Like, it's got all the songs on it that you would like from them, and I just think it's just a great sounding album. Fantastic. Next up, a masterpiece that I hadn't owned for a long time, so I put it in the playlist. This one, Gabriel 3. It's been on that playlist now for about, I want to say around 3 months. It's starting to wane already, though, because it's, of course, I played it a ton when I first got it. I played it a ton when I had it on cassette, and now I played it a ton with this too. It's been in my playlist. I did a video on it, all that kind of stuff. But it's been in my Peter Gabriel list, of course, ranking list. So it's got a fair amount of exposure, and it simply has. It's not fresh enough or new enough to get a lot of energy in it, because it's been around for so long, and I've heard so much of it that it's going to burn out quicker. So I don't want it to burn out completely. So it'll probably come down, maybe prematurely. Probably would come down before the 4th month, but it's on the list right now. A new album for me, not a new album by any stretch. This album goes back to the early 70s. I got lucky when I went shopping one day. I found a bunch of $2, and there was this and another copy of this. There was 2 copies of it. One was a Masters recopy, and then there was this original one, Toys in the Attic. So I kept this original one. I sold the other one. I'm not one of these guys that has to have 10 copies of everything. Maybe I will be like that someday, but at this point in time, I'm not like that. And but this is a really good album, and the more I listen to it, the more I like it. It's much better than some of the stuff that they put out later. There's some really, really interesting stuff in here, and some really good guitar stuff in here too. So this album, again, I think it's been around about the same length of time as the Gabriel one. I think I got it marked down for that amount of time. Yeah, around the same amount of time, but it's going to last longer, because it's only starting to get up there now. I would say it's my favorite current album is Secret Treaties. This one is in the top 5 though, for sure. Next up is an album that surprised me. People have been talking to me about this group for decades, and not only wasn't I listening to them, but I wasn't even interested in them. And I just kept saying, I don't care. Don't bring them up. I'm not interested in them. I admired the vocalist. I thought he had a very solid voice. But then recently, I've been listening to another group who has a vocalist who sounds very similar to him. And I started finding all their albums everywhere for $1, $2 here, $1 there. So I thought, I'll collect them anyway. So now I have them all, I think. But so I said, I'll do the same thing I've done with King Crimson. I'll start at the beginning and work my way through. And I've grown to like this album. Surprises me. You don't even want to know how much this surprises me. And we're talking about the Doors. They were never a band I liked. My best friend liked them, and it was the one band that he liked that I didn't like. And I'll go on record as saying I don't like them. I didn't like them. There was nothing really about them I liked. I thought they're basically a great vocalist surrounded with a bunch of weak guys, and that's what I thought. Now I'm having second thoughts about that. But this album has been on the charts now, or not on the charts. I don't know what I keep calling the charts on them. It's been on my playlist, coming up to about 3 months. Good album though, solid album, and I'm liking it. More and more I listen to it, the more I like it. And it's actually cracked. I think it's in my top 5. I think it is. It is in the top 5. Then the next one came out roughly the same period of time. Been on about the same amount of time. I think this and the next, these 3, this one and the next 2, they've been on roughly around 3 months. Sorry, I'm trying to find the right angle so you can see this. This is Campbell's Moon. My Moon Madness 2. Okay, or is it just Moon? It's just Moon Madness. I always think that's a 2, but it's 2 S's. Anyways, good album. I really like the keyboards on here quite a bit. It surprised me. It doesn't really sound like it's a progressive rock album. There's no doubt about that. But I kept thinking, well, at first I thought it's a little bit Genesee and maybe a little bit of this or that, but I don't really think it sounds like anything. I think it's just really good, and it has its own kind of smoothness to it. I don't think it's as instrumentally great as some of the other stuff I've been listening to, but I think that it's deceptive. That's what it is. I think it's better than I think it is. I just haven't gotten a long enough listen to it to really know if it's like that. But it's a good album. Okay, so that's the first half stack. Now we get to the back stack. I'm just going to move it so I can get at them, but I don't want to put them too close because they slide around too much. So this one is next. Same as the Camel and the Doors one. I think they all went on the playlist at the same time. At first, this was my favorite of the three. It's now my third favorite of the three, but it's not a bad album. It surprised me. I liked it. John Anderson's voice is on it. There's some really solid tracks on here. But there's some weak stuff too, and some John Anderson sounding stuff as well. Like when I say John Anderson sounding stuff, it's not Yes. It sounds more like it should be on his solo stuff. But and then there's some stuff on here that kind of is like it's like a carryover from the Rabin era, which I like, but it's different. So there's kind of a mix of everything here. So it's not a bad album. Of course, the artwork is great, as always is with Roger Dean. But I've enjoyed this album, and it's going to stay on the playlist for a while, I think. Then we get to this one, which I'm doing a look back at a classic rock album this week. I'm not going to say much about it. It's not going to be on my charts. It won't be on my playlist much longer. The thing about it is that it's been about 2.5 months, and I realized that fairly quickly that all 5 of the tracks on here I was familiar with, much more familiar with than I had thought. I thought there was a few on here I didn't know, but I knew everyone. Most of them have been played out quite a bit for me, so it's going to burn out really quickly, but still a great album, and we'll be doing a look back at a classic rock album on it this week. This one here surprised me. I liked it initially when I got this and the Rust Never Sleeps album at the same time, same day. They were on the rack together. I bought them both. Put the Rust Sleep in the playlist. This one had to wait its turn, and it's gotten on there. And after it had been on there a couple weeks, I thought, it's not as good. I don't know if I like it. And then I listened to it last week, and I really liked it a lot. Like it's sometimes the second and third listenings you really hear more than you want. So I've grown to like this quite a bit, and not for the tracks I originally thought I would, but for some different stuff that I didn't know, that I hadn't listened to as much. And so it's been only on maybe a month and a half on there. It's one of the ones replacing a lot of the older stuff that I took down over the last month. I've taken down like maybe half a dozen stuff that had been on there for quite a bit of time, and so this is one of those replacements. Great album though. Here's an album that's taken right off with me. Took a while to get it on there. When I bought it, I listened to it, and I had listened to one of their other albums that I had liked a lot, and then I couldn't get it because they didn't have it, so I got this. People had said this was their best album, so I got this, and I didn't hate it or anything, but it didn't do anything for me. And then so I put it on the shelf, and then I just, at the end of every month when I do my hauls and I'm moving stuff around, I say, okay, what new stuff should I put in my list of albums waiting for their turn? And I thought, I'm going to give this an album a chance, and it's been on there now about a month and a half, and I really think it's good. It's moving up quickly. I think it's going to end up in my top 5 fairly soon. I really like the artwork on it a lot, and there's some heavy stuff on here, and there's some really interesting stuff. and some really good guitar. And you can hear Lemmy's voice on this quite a bit too, but it doesn't sound anything like Motorhead to me. But just fantastic album. Next, put this on the same day as that one. So this one's actually, I think this one came the week after. It might have been the week after. It's been over a month now, and it's really good too. It's more psychedelic than I thought. It's had about 3 plays with me already, and the first one, of course, was when I first bought it, and then there's 3 more since it's been on the playlist for about a month and a half. So it's had probably three listens. One of the listens, I was thinking about pulling it, and then I'll give it a little longer. Then the last listen to it, I really listened to it quite a bit. It's not really as progressive as I originally thought it was going to be, and that may have why it was a little bit more disappointing, but it's definitely psychedelic. It belongs in that era with the psychedelic albums for sure. And there's some really good instrumentation on this as well. So Atomic Rooster. So we're down to the newest albums. Most of these last 5 have been on less than a month. Well, this one's been on a month. This one I put on because my stand-up album was one of the albums I pulled. When I pulled it, I put this on. Or, actually, I think I put this on and then pulled it. So this is the 3rd Jethro Tull album. So I've listened to first one once. It's on my shelf. I haven't listened to it since. The second one, of course, is Stand Up, which was a great album. At one point, it was my favorite album for a while there. And then, of course, there's Aqualung, which is a classic masterpiece album for me. So this one here falls in between Aqualung and Stand Up. And so far, I like it. I don't think it's it's not having the huge impact that Stand Up had right away, but I have a feeling it's going to do well. Really solid. So it's had 2 plays since I put it on there, and then of course the initial play that I got when I bought it as well. Next up, we talk about this in my ranking albums this week. So this one I bought, and I've listened to the entire album at least once, and then now I put it in my playlist, so it's got a second full time through. Lots of really good stuff on it. I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more of this album. I think this album is going to be a big hit with me. Less than a month though, so it's hard to tell. These next 3 have had one listen to only since they've been on the playlist, because I was sick and I wasn't listening to as much. But this is the Nectar one, Time Machine. Very different than the other 2 Nectars, but I thought I wouldn't like that, but I do. I really like this album quite a bit, and it's not like the other 2 Nectars, which took a little bit to get into. This one I got it. I like right away. I hope it's gonna have a similar impact, but I like the artwork quite a bit. They've got some of the best album covers, Nectar. Next up, this one surprised me. Got it. I bought it on a whim. It was there. I said, I'll take it. I think I bought it based on the fact that I really like George Harrison. That was the reason I bought it. But I like this. I listened to the entire album when I bought it, and then I put it on my playlist because of that. And I listened to it for the first time on my playlist yesterday, and there's a lot of good stuff on here. Bob Dylan's voice aside, everything else I like pretty much. Great. Traveling Wilburys, in case anybody didn't read that properly. And then this one, who I just got about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was destined, or it was on the Hull, not the last Hull, but the one before that. It was destined to get airplay. I knew some of the tracks very well on this album. There's 2 or 3 that I had actually recorded. And this was the reason I got this album, is because I knew those tracks. And a lot of the stuff that I didn't know on it I like a lot, and I played it once and then put it in my track, and it had its first listen to yesterday. Thin Lizzy's Thunder and Lightning is a lot heavier album, but also has a lot of classic kind of Thin Lizzy sound to it. Just good production. I love Phil Lynot's voice. He's got to be one of the best heavy metal vocalist voices of all time. And John Sykes is great on this. Gorham, of course, and Downey, and all of these people are really good on here. So an album that I think is destined to do well on my playlist charts. It's going to be on here for a while, no doubt about it. The only songs, Cold Sweat, Thunder and Lightning, are the two songs that I had recorded from before that I know of. So they're a little burned out, but the rest of the stuff is all like brand new to me. So and I like some of it quite a bit. Anyways, so there you go. There's what's on my playlist. There's how I feel about each of the tracks at different stages. Kind of gives you an idea of how my playlist works. Then I wanted to explain to what the purpose of having a playlist and why it works for me and how it helps me. And anyways, I hope that was interesting to people. And it was fun to do. So that's all that. So, and basically, as you see, most of the stuff will go 3 to 4 months is probably about average, and then after that it's a hit and miss to see how long they stay. And there's always 2 or 3 albums that make it to 6 months, but very few, if any, make it to 9-10 months. Like I've had maybe over the years, I've had maybe 3 albums break 10 months. I can't even think of who they are either. It's been so long since I've had one. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this show. Please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated, and we'll be back with some more content very soon. So you have yourself a good day. Bye.